Well, we're reaching the end of season one. Episode 26 will begin in just a minute, but first of all, the date is now May 22nd of 1987. The story begins in the shopping mall. As you may have guessed, the video does what she knows best, videotaping, while Anthony does his new ad with the Fifth Avenue boys. Kimber, who's now 20 years old, has just caught up with her sister Jerga and asked about the Glitter and Gold contest and what happened to Jim. But however, Jerga just told her that she doesn't want to hear about it. Now, Kimber, who was reading the exact same magazine, got annoyed and throws it on the floor. And that's when she caught the attention of Rio, who introduced her to Max, the photographer. So, anyway, back with Rio, he was looking at the exact same magazine that Kimber threw on the floor earlier after she was looking at it. So then it's Jericho's turn to look at it, and then she gave him the exact same response as she gave her sister that she doesn't want to hear about Jim anymore, and then she stormed off. Back with Kimber, she had just continued her conversation with Max, and so she now remembers that Jeff was supposed to be picking her up, but Max agreed to take her out on Saturday. Meanwhile, outside, when Jeff went to pick up Kimber, they both agreed to do some motorcycle riding together. Meanwhile, the Misfits who had just arrived in the limousine had just went inside the Discovery Music Store. They've been on top of the charts lately since Jim's now MIA. So when Eric shows up, he and the mistress went inside the music store where they met up with Owen Beach, who was an announcer and also the owner of the place. He said that there's a glitter and gold contest coming up, and whoever sells a 500,000 records will win the trophy, the gold record, the glitter and gold roaster, and of course a banquet that's coming up later. But now here comes a problem, because when Owen explained to one of the press members that since Jim's MIA, and of course, he hasn't decided who's going to compete with the Misfits yet. So when the next reporter was asking Possess of the Misfits how did she and the band have felt about it since now they've been popular, well, to answer that, we go into the Misfits song of How Does It Feel? So after the song ended, the Misfits could just imagine what it's like to be in the Glitter and Gold roaster right this minute. Kimber, meanwhile, who just got back to the Starlight Mansion along with Jeff, so Jeff agrees to take her out on Saturday too. Jerka, meanwhile, who just got back from the mall, went to Synergy's room. So Synergy wants to know what's going on with her. So Jerka said that she wasn't sure what to do and she's been jealous lately of herself. And now she's left to wonder how she's going to explain to Rio when she can finally confess and tell him who she really was. So after Synergy heard that, she says to Jerica, I wish I could help you with that. Well, maybe you could, Jerica said. So Synergy agrees to project Rio, the holographic image, so that Jerica can finally at long last tell Rio the truth of who she really was. And that's when the holographic image of Rio reacted by saying that he had reached his limit on lies and betrayal and he'll never forgive her for it. So after the test came to an end, Jericho now realizes what the real Rio should react when she told him that. Well, Synergy says, it's just a test. You just passed with flying colors. But then again, I may be wrong. And that's when Jericho said that the real Rio will listen to her and she'll do whatever it takes, even if it meant hurting his feelings. And if that's so, then so be it. So Saturday, May 23rd of 1987, when Rio came over, Jerica said that she had something to tell Rio. At the same time, Max went ahead to visit Kimber at the Starlight Mansion so that he could take her out on a date. So while Max agreed to wait for Kimber in the living room, that's when Aja less than Jeff minutes later, and he did the exact same thing as Max did. To wait for Kimber. And that's when Asha told Kimber that Jeff is waiting for her as well as Max did. And that's when both men in the living room began having an argument on who's dating Kimber and they started having a fight. So back outside with Jerka and Rio, that's when they heard a window from the living room broke. Well, luckily, Jeff and Max are not exactly hurt after both the women, Asha and Kimber, were comforting the two men at once. So Jeff was asking Kimber what's the big deal, and that's when Kimber confessed that she almost forgot one simple thing, that she had a date with Max as well as Jeff. Well, that made Jeff upset, and as a result, both Jeff and Max decided to break up with her on the spot, and then both the men left. So after the two men left, it's now Rio's turn to confront Kimber by asking how could you treat these two men this way and why are you doing it? And that she should be ashamed for what she did. And Rio said, and I quote, that he had reached his limit on lies and betrayal and hoped that Jeff and Max will never speak with Kimber after the way she treated them. So Kimber ran off, and now it's Jerica's turn to say, how could you speak with her that way? And that's when Rio pleads his case to say that Kimber's wrong and she shouldn't be treating these men this way. Well, at least you could have done is listen to her, Jerica said. When Rio catches up with Jerga, he apologizes and says, I couldn't help what I was feeling, then reminded of Jerga that she had something to tell him, but then she hesitated, and that made Rio upset, so after that he left. And now poor Jerga and Kibber are ashamed with regret and guilt. So later, Jerga and her friends had arrived at the music store to talk to Owen Beach. And when walking towards the back to where Owen was, that's when Asha begged Jerica to reconsider on signing up Jim and the holograms for this contest. Because, as Asha said in her case, that Rio's probably angry with you already, so what have you got to lose? And that's when Jerica and her friends heard the voices of Eric, the Misfits, and Owen talking about who they wanted to compete with the Misfits. And as you may have guessed it, that's when Owen suggested that the Fifth Avenue boys should compete, and that's when, according to him, Jericho should be the one to talk to him about it. But then Possessum dismisses it and said that there's no way. Then Roxy explains that those Fifth Avenue boys don't have a chance, and that the prize should be given to the Misfits instead. So then it's Stormer's turn to make a suggestion that Eric should have a contract with them. Well, even though Eric agrees with Stormer's idea, but then said that Jerica will ruin their careers just as she did with Jim's. Well, that comment made Jerica upset, and that's why she changed herself into Jim to talk to Owen about signing the band up. They being the holograms, that is. So when Jim appeared on the stage, she said to Owen, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you can guarantee a delivery of 500,000 records, you can put us on that registry to compete with the Misfits. So Owen was asking Jim if she was sure of it. She not only said yes, that she can guarantee a delivery of 500,000 records, that's when he says, okay, you got yourself a deal. Back with Rio, who was in the recording studio, he was still depressed over his argument with Jerga, and that's when Jim appeared out of nowhere. He was glad to see her and the band. He says, I knew you're here. You're back. So after Jim and Rio finished their hug, that's when she said to Rio, we need to make a new record right away. So Rio not only agrees, he says, well, what are we waiting for? Let's do this. But then Jim says, wait a minute, I just had a thought. What if we could make an album that's even better than that? We need a new look, some new clothes, glitter and gold to be exact. So speaking of which, we go into that song Glitter and Gold by the Holograms themselves. So you've heard right. The Holograms are not only back, but they have a new album in the works. So it's now 3 days later on May 26th of 1987. Eric, meanwhile, had just hired the Skulls, which is the punkin band, to do a favor for him. And what was that favor? Well, to make sure that Jim's records don't get delivered in time. And why is that? Because as any person will tell you, that it's all part of Eric's plan. So later at the album's warehouse, and that's when Jerka told Rio that Jim made a promise to Owen to deliver those records, 500,000 of it to be exact, but he told her it's much too dangerous, but Jerka insisted anyway. And by how will she deliver those records? By driving the Starlight Express van to be exact. So now Jerka, driving the Starlight Express, as she was on her way to deliver 500,000 records, she didn't know that she was surrounded by the Skulls that was previously hired by Eric to do a favor for him. So Jerka, now surrounded and had no place else to go, that's when the Skulls did what any aggressive gang would do, destroy all the records. But then, suddenly, Rio with the baseball bat came to Jerka's rescue. The Skulls knew that they didn't have a chance with Rio, so they ran off. So after the Skulls ran off, not only did Rio apologize to Jerka for his past behavior at the mansion earlier, she forgives him, and on top of that, they both made up. So the next morning at the music store is now May 27th of 1987. That's when the day finally arrived for the Glitter and Gold contest. So Owen explains how the system works. So every time a customer buys a record for all the Discovery Music stores all over America, the scoreboard will go up or down, and there's no way that both bands can cheat. So even Pizzazz said in her case that they didn't need to, and then made a snide remark to Kimber and her bandmates of how they should, quote, find a new line of work. Well, that made Kimber annoyed and upset. And that's when Jim tells Kimber, pay no attention to those misfits. If I know Lindsay, she'll be showing a new video of our new album right now. And wouldn't you know it, Jim was soon proven right. So thanks to Lindsay, Jim's fans quickly responded to the Discovery Store and bought the new album that Jim did right away. So after Jim's fans bought the new record, that's when the holograms began to lead. So then Possessed told the holograms, well, don't celebrate yet because, as she says in her case, that they still got a long way to go. So we go to the We're Up and You're Down song by the holograms and the Misfits themselves. After the song came to an end, that's when the Misfits went to Eric's office to tell him that the holograms are winning and what's he going to do about it. So Eric told the Misfits the bad news that he couldn't go around the system. But aha, it doesn't mean that Eric has plan B in mind. So, in a parking lot of Discovery Music, that's when Eric decided to give all the money to anybody who would buy Misfits records. Although the Misfits were not exactly sure with Eric's idea and they seemed skeptical. But Eric, being as ruthless as he is, said, trust me, Lise, it'll work. And maybe you will win for sure. So when Eric sees a lady heading in his direction, he was more than glad to give her the money to say, here, buy a Misfits record. So she went into the music store, but instead of a Misfits record, she bought the Jim's record instead, and that made Eric upset. Back inside the music store, the holograms are now ahead by over 150,000 records. When back with the Misfits, when they saw that the holograms are leading, they told Eric to do something, but Eric said that he ran out of money. Sometime later, the Starlight Express showed up with the Starlight Girls, and they bought the Jim's records. And when they did, the holograms are now ahead by 11. So finally, when the both bands are tied up for one album apiece, so whoever wins the contest is anybody's guess. So when Owen says that whoever buys the record is the winner, so it's now up to Rio to buy Jim's record. So Rio agrees to buy Jim's record, and just when the holograms were about to win, Pizzazz the Misfit says, wait a minute, because she said that Rio's working with Jim. So when Owen agrees that Rio does work for Jim, so once again, both the bands are tied one album apiece. But then Kimber spotted somebody buying a record, but not just one record, but two, one of each. So once again, both bands are tied. So when both of the bands are once again tied by 500,000 records apiece, so Owen agrees to extend the deadline by one record. So that means the young man has to buy neither a Misfits or a Jim record. So Dondra the Starlight Girls had an idea. Clash, or Constance for short, thought of the same idea to stop Dondra the Starlight Girls from succeeding. So when the young boy had told neither Clash and Dondra that he can only afford one record, and not exactly both, so as the last resort, Dondra the Starlight Girls took the money from Clash, and when Clash started chasing after her, Dondra says, well, you're too late now, because when Clash looked over her shoulder, somebody bought the Jim record, and guess what? The holograms won by one record. The holograms did it. They won the Glitter and Gold contest, and they were cheered with joy. Stormer tries to cheer up Possess and says, well, at least we did make a 500,000 records. Well, that comment made Possess upset. So you've heard right. The holograms not only won the Glitter and Gold contest, but even better, they won a gold record, the trophy, the Glitter and Gold roaster, and even a party later on with Owen along with Rio. So later on during the Glitter and Gold banquet, what's even more better is that Rio gets to have a victory dance with Jim. And so that ends episode 26. Thank you for watching season 1 of Jim, but don't worry, I got more on the way. So make sure you hit the thumbs up. I'll see you soon.